Describe her demeanor.
Miss Reed's.
Yes.
Jen! Jen! And then she's screaming that John didn't come home. She left him at the waterfall. She was hysterical. It was very hard to follow what she was saying.
Hi, Crime Junkie jurors. Today is April 29th, 2025, and we just wrapped up day 6 of the Karen Reed trial. So here is a recap of what we heard today. Now, the day started off with the judge addressing the rock in the yard. Now, as a reminder, on the jury view, there was a big rock that was placed in the yard near the street. It was hand painted and it had the name Albert on it. But that rock has never been there before, and it was gone the day after the viewing. So questions about where it came from and who put it there have been swirling all over the media and social media. Now, the judge said that both sides have stipulated to addressing this for the jury. So Judge Canoni lets the jury know that the rock was not there at the time of John's death. Also, we heard yesterday that the Supreme Court of the United States has denied Karen's petition and will not review her case. Now, that was kind of her last chance at having the murder charge and the charge for leaving the scene dismissed. And they made that decision yesterday morning, which means that trial will continue as planned. And it did continue today. So we had Ian Whiffen. Now, this is the Cellebrite and data forensics expert for the prosecution. And his cross-examination continued today. And the majority of our day in court today was once again spent on very technical data testimony. So here are the main points that the defense attorney, Bob Alessi, was able to make. Whiffen's report says that at 12:25 a.m., the location data shows John and Karen pulling up to Fairview. But his report says that for the next 12 minutes, so until 12:37 a.m., there is not reliable location data. Now, the reason that this is such a big deal is because this is the time that the defense says that something happened in the house. And this is the time that the prosecution says that Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe with her car. And now Alessi is pointing out to the jury that the location data that they are both relying on to show that John O'Keefe either did or didn't enter the house is not reliable. And the location data can be unreliable like that if someone, say, enters the home or the basement, for example, which is part of the defense's theory. So that was a big point for the defense on cross-examination. Now, another big point that Alessi made came when he entered a picture from Whiffen's report into evidence. Now, he pulled it up, and this is one that Whiffen did not show the jury during his direct examination. It was not in his PowerPoint. The picture was impactful for the defense because it showed a large circle that encompasses the area where John O'Keefe's phone location could have been, and that circle actually covers the majority of the house at 34 Fairview. Now, Whiffen admitted that he didn't use that circle when coming to his conclusion that the phone didn't enter the home. And on redirect, Whiffen says that the white circle is lower accuracy and it covers like a 5-second period, and he says that that's why it wasn't included. Now, another point that Alessi made on cross was the distance from the flagpole to the door. So this was a kind of big one too. Alessi points out that it's around 72 feet, and John O'Keefe's phone registered 84 feet in steps right after they arrived. So pretty close. Now, Special Prosecutor Brennan said on redirect that if the steps counted when John O'Keefe was walking up to the house, then there would likely be movement or steps that were registered on the way back. So he kind of suggests to the jury that the defense's theory on that should be just ignored or disregarded. And finally, Alessi discussed the testing of the phone battery temperature and how the battery temperature will drop in the cold. Now, when Whiffen did some experiments to test this, he said that the phone battery temperature dropped, but looking at his chart, it dropped at a much faster rate than what John's phone did. So Brennan says that that's because John was laying on his phone, which kind of like insulated it some, basically. But during this line of questioning, Alessi did also get Whiffen to say that the temperature of the phone doesn't give any information on location. So that could be considered a win for the defense on that regard. Now, on redirect, Whiffen also did a presentation to try to demonstrate how a timestamp may give a different time on a Google search, basically trying to kind of recreate this happening in real time for the jury. And then when the defense got back up one more time, attorney Alessi asked about the demonstration being a different version of Celebrite now. And he also made the point again that Axiom, which is Celebrite's competition, is another reliable software program, and that Axiom actually does still show the timestamp for 227. So overall, it is a lot of technical testimony, a lot of back and forth over what the data could mean and about how it can be interpreted. Now, the general conclusion that Whiffen made is that he does not think that John's phone entered the home at 34 Fairview, although the defense worked to poke holes in the reliability of the data and in Whiffen's interpretation of it. Now, the thing about this kind of data is that it's open for interpretation to an extent because there are so many contributing factors that can impact the reliability of it. So what do you think about this expert and his opinions? Let me know in comments. Do you think that it helped one side over the other? Do you think it helped either side or none? Let me know. Now, the next and last witness of the day is one that we have all been waiting on, Jen McCabe. Now, Jen was with Karen the night of January 28th and the following morning when they were searching for John O'Keefe. It's actually Jen's phone that made that now infamous Haas Long to Die in the Cold search that the experts are battling over. The prosecution saying that the search was made at 6:24 a.m. And of course, the defense saying it was made at 2:27 a.m., just hours before John was found on the lawn at Fairview. And get this, her testimony today began literally with her taking the stand and getting sworn in at 2:27. Wild, right? Now, Jen starts out by giving some family background, and she looks straight at the jury often when she's answering questions, which is something that the other witnesses haven't really done. Now, Jen is telling the jury about herself, and she talks about how she stayed home with her children, and she referred to herself as a typical small town mom. Now, it's through her children that she first met John O'Keefe, and she says that they became good friends. Prosecutor Hank Brennan walks Jen through a line of questioning where she's basically just kind of giving all of the details about what happened the night of January 28th. So after her daughter's basketball game, she met up with some of her family and some other parents at the Waterfall Bar and Grill. And that was around 9 o'clock. It was her sister, Nicole Albert, who lives at Fairview Road, 34 Fairview Road, and Nicole's daughter, Caitlin, plus Caitlin's boyfriend. And then Nicole's husband, Brian Albert, joined them later along with his friend, Brian Higgins. Now, also there was Brian Albert's brother, Chris Albert, with his wife, Julie. And it was around 11 p.m. when Karen Reed and John O'Keefe walked in and joined them all as well. So it's basically like a bunch of extended family, a couple friends, and then Karen Reed and John O'Keefe. Now, Jen says that she had a few drinks. She said that she was happy to see John and Karen when they came in. They showed video of her hugging them at different points when they walked in. And she says that she was friends with John O'Keefe, but she knew Karen, but she says they weren't really close. Like, she kind of described their relationship as friendly, but she said they never really spent time together without John. So they weren't really friends, but they were friendly. So she says that as the night was wrapping up, Karen asked to go to D&E Pizza, which is the pizza and sub shop that Chris Albert owned right across the street. It's something that they did sometimes after being out. But the group didn't want to go there. Instead, they were going to Brian and Nicole Albert's house at 34 Fairview, since it was their son, Brian Jr.'s 23rd birthday, and he had a few friends over. So Jen says that she invited Karen, but she says that Karen declined, although she and John O'Keefe did end up coming after all. Jen said that she talked to John when he was on the way, gave him directions to the house, used Bella's mom's house as a landmark. This is something we've heard before. This is a woman that John dated years before. Now, Jen describes walking in at 34 Fairview, and she lists out the friends of Brian Jr.'s that were there, says that they were hanging around the table listening to music. And so the question kind of starts about what she saw when it comes to Karen Reed. She says that at one point she saw the dark SUV pull up, and she just assumed it was Karen's SUV. She assumed it was Karen and John. She says at first it was in front of the house, and then she looked out again and it was closer to the flagpole, and she looked out again and it was further down. So she looked out a few times, saw it in different positions. She also said that she sent John a few texts asking if it was him, telling him where to park. And then Jen said that John never came in the house. Now, she left driving a few of Brian Jr.'s friends home. They left around 1:45 that morning. And then she and her husband, Matt, went home, where she says she made a Google search about a basketball team for her daughter and then went to sleep. And then she woke up the next morning to a phone call from John's niece and said that she could hear Karen screaming in the background. Now, Jen says that Karen told her she left John O'Keefe at Waterfall. Jen said that she immediately went into mom mode, is what she called it. She said she was trying to basically call anyone who may know anything about where John O'Keefe was. She said that after she had time to think about it, though, that's when she remembered seeing Karen pull up to Fairview. So she called back, and she says when she told Karen this, Karen said she didn't remember and began asking if she hit him or could she have hit him, and then tells Jen that she has a broken taillight. Now, Jen says that Karen shows up at her house frantic and screaming. Her husband said to tell Karen to shut up before she wakes up the neighbors. Carrie Roberts joins them and then follows them to John's house to look for him there. Now, Jen gives the same recollection about how it was so weird that Karen didn't take off her shoes when they went in John's house, since John had a rule that you couldn't wear shoes in the house. Jen said that John's niece was there and that she was terrified. She said that she promised that she was going to find John and everything would be okay. And then out in the driveway, Jen says that Karen pointed out the cracked taillight, and then they all rode together in Carrie's car to 34 Fairview. Jen said that on the way there, she was looking for John, and at some point, Karen asked if he could be at Bella's mom's house, and also mentioned another woman who lived in the area that John had dated many years before. Now, when they pulled up, Karen saw John, jumped out of the car, and Jen said that Carrie looked over at her and said that Karen was, quote unquote, batshit crazy. Now, Jen described seeing John in the yard and said that it looked like him, but just frozen. She said she stood there in shock for a moment, then called 911, got the blankets from Carrie's car and took them over to John. And then she said she began doing chest compressions while Karen did mouth to mouth. Now, at this point, testimony concluded for the day, and Jen will be back on the stand tomorrow. So far, a lot of testimony that Jen gave is kind of the same as it was in the first trial. However, most of the issues will come up during cross-examination because her testimony in the last trial has so many differences from the police statements of her interviews. And that's something the defense really dug into last time, and I expect they will this time as well. The cross-examination of Jen McCabe in the last trial was one of the spiciest during the whole time. So make sure to join us live as we watch it together and discuss it tomorrow, right here, Crime Junkie Jury. So it's going to be a big one. Now, the day ended with the final arguments for ARCCA along with the judge's ruling. Now, as a reminder, ARCCA is an engineering and crash reconstruction firm that specializes in forensics. They were hired by the feds for the federal investigation, and they concluded that John O'Keefe's injuries did not line up with the damage to the car and vice versa. Now, when the defense saw that report, they reached out, asked them to testify in the last trial, which they did. So now the defense wants to use them for that, but also to give rebuttal testimony for the prosecution's crash reconstruction expert. And the prosecution has tried to keep this out. Now, prosecutor Hank Brennan makes his argument and tells the judge that he doesn't want to just exclude the new information from ARCCA. Now, he also wants to exclude them from testifying about their first report as well, something that he has said from the start that he welcomes. So apparently he changed his mind. Now, he says that Dr. Wolf, the ARCCA expert who testified yesterday, deleted text between him and the defense attorneys and also didn't inform the court that they had some communications through the Signal app earlier this year. Now, Signal is an app that uses encryption to keep others from being able to access your communications. So here's the thing, though. To be clear, the prosecution is asking to have a report from ARCCA kept out of the trial because of communications after that report. A report that is exculpatory for the defense, and more importantly, one that never changed, even after the defense reached out to them. So when Brennan finished his argument, the judge asked defense attorney Alessi how she's supposed to reconcile there being texts that were deleted between the defense and the expert, since the code of conduct says communications should be kept for 10 years. Now, this part was kind of crazy. So as Alessi starts to explain that the rule that she just mentioned applies to client property and communications, not with communications with experts, He's saying this rule has nothing to do with this situation. And Judge Cannoni seems to know this because as he's giving his answer, she cuts him off and says she agrees that he's right and he's going to win this argument and she's ready to make her ruling. So Judge Cannoni says she understands the prosecution's argument, but a defendant's right to a fair trial is paramount to everything. So ARCCA will be allowed to testify to their first report and also the new rebuttal testimony, but that report has to be turned in by May 7th. So that was a crazy moment. Make sure you check it out. It's right towards the end of the live stream from today, and it's like a crazy moment, just back and forth. Now, it's a good call that she made also because both the defense and the ARCCA experts have said that the conversations that they had nothing involved that wasn't allowed. So to exclude them based on the opposing counsel's speculation on what was in those conversations, I think it would have been a grave miscarriage of justice. So I think it was a good decision by Judge Cannoni. So I do give credit for that. She definitely didn't miss the opportunity to scold the defense in the process, though. So make sure you check that part out too. This case is getting wilder by the day, and it is only the second week. So we will be live again tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. as Jen McCabe returns to the stand. And then defense attorney Alan Jackson will begin his cross-examination, and you will not want to miss a moment of that. That part is going to get really intense, and you need to come watch it with us, experience it with us, talk about it with us, and join us. It'll be tomorrow morning. We will be live right here, 9 a.m. Eastern on Crime Junkie Jury.